There was something that I was thinking about today that I felt like talking to you about rather than writing about. When I was a kid, the fundamental rhythm of my life came in the form of long, sustained hours of reading. It is indelibly imprinted in my mind how I would stretch out on my bed right next to the window in my little bedroom that looked out over our family's yard and this sprawling magnolia tree that became a fundamental metaphor of my young imaginative life, and over the patchy rooftops and garages and the steeple of St. Peter's in the background. And with this view, kind of I would lean into the windowsill and I would read. I would read for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I had a pile of books maybe next to me, and I would move through them just one after another. And that quiet, that simmering in stories for an extended period of time, that focus, that concentration, that kind of empathy you cultivate with characters, that sort of leap of emotions and intellect and all the things that come up for you when you read, it's just shaped me. There's just shaped the very core of my being, and I know this. And as I've gotten older, of course, reading has remained a very baseline part of how I live my life. I carry usually multiple books with me everywhere I go. I have the aching shoulders to prove it. And I snatch, half hours, 20 minutes, an hour to read all the time. And I like talking to you about what I read and what you read. And I like reviewing books and finding new ways of thinking about the kind of stories I read and how we tell stories and what kind of stories I want to write, both as a journalist and constantly, if not always consistently, as a fiction writer. And I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that kind of thread that has come with me through every transformation I've ever made in my life. But today, the reason I was meditating on this is this morning I woke up early, and I found the morning to have this really beautiful, blue, cool, clean feel about it, the hush over the city, and that sort of immersive, open space that seems to come to Detroit on Sunday mornings, and that I really love and value. And I took my books with me, and I went to a coffee shop that I hadn't been to in a very long time, and I found a little table right by the window where the sun increasingly beamed in as the day unfolded, and I can still feel the warmth on the back of my neck and my skin from sitting there for a long, long time reading. And I was reading in a way that was really alert and wakeful compared to that sort of hazy, filmy way I read in the hour before I fall asleep. And I did not have, my phone next to me to check messages. I didn't have my computer, where my finger, tempting me to refresh my email or anything like that. And I read, and I drank really delicious coffee, and this sounds like a really simple thing, but it occurred to me as I read one book from beginning to end and read nearly completely another. It occurred to me how long it had been that I'd had hours upon hours of unagitated reading time, and how different that experience is from the pockets of reading that I tend to experience in my day-to-day life most of the time, almost all the time. And I miss it, I miss that that whole-bodied experience, that sense of reading as long as I want. And I can feel how by not doing that, by not having those kind of hours and hours of long reading time, that experience of reading a book cover to cover in one sitting has changed how I read and how I experience stories. I can feel that usually my concentration gets a little more agitated and broken, and with that, I think I lose some of my experience, some of my ability to fully embody and live in a story that is offered to me. Here, let me show you what I was reading, just because it's fun. I read a great deal of This Is How You Lose Her by Junot Diaz, who I love so much, and who, if you read my site at all, you know I've been raving about the final story, The Cheater's Guide to Love, since I first read it in August in the New Yorker. And even though this is a collection of stories, I feel that, which almost like begs to be experienced in that broken, one piece at a time way of reading that is my habit most of the time. It's a different feel when you read it as a whole, when you go through one story after another, when the juxtaposition of one tale and another tale sits with you more acutely. And yeah, it ended up being a more physical experience, if that makes any kind of sense, to when I read Diaz's stories all together. And I also read A.D. New Orleans After the Deluge, Josh Neufield's book, which is a graphic novel and has a different kind of immersive reading experience that it offers. And I liked it a lot, but I do have some frustrations, which I mean to tell you about in another form at another time. But the point is that I can feel this like really deep happiness in me, that sort of peacefulness that I can feel deep in my belly, and I can feel simmer up to the very top of my skin. And I know this is the right thing for me to do, to prioritize this long reading time that I think I too often treat as a luxury or a flourish or a sort of vacation, rather than what it had been when I was younger, which is my way of living my life. And when I value stories so much, those that are offered to me and those I might be able to bring into the world, that I hope to help midwife into the world, I feel like I need to make this happen. I feel like I need to be blocking out time to read in a way that I haven't been before, because, well, in a fundamental way, not because it's my duty so much to the stories in the world or my vocation or anything like that, but because it's so joyful and so important to my well-being. And I think when I feel myself getting anxious or restless or agitated and all these other things that tend to happen when you have a lot of things going on and aren't getting much sleep, and as I have been lately, having some really strange dreams, what an amazing way of settling back into yourself, you know, to be reading. It sounds so simple, but it makes me really happy, and I wanted to tell you about it. And with that, I think I'm going to sign off and maybe read some more. Anyway, thank you for listening.